In 2023, the state of Idaho received over 4 million 911 calls. Much like many parts of the country, these calls were processed by dedicated and professional emergency telecommunicators who worked hard to ensure that help went where it was needed most. But antiquated systems used by some parts of the state made this job harder than it needed to be. Recently, Sheriff Andy Creech, chairman of the Idaho Public Safety Communications Committee, has started to change that. This is Lifeline. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Lifeline 911 with your host, Erica.
Hello.
I'm your co-host, Gary, and today we have a special guest. Sheriff Andy Creech serves as the chairman of the Idaho Public Safety Communications Committee, IPSC, and has spent more than 28 years in the law enforcement profession, 2 years at the New Plymouth Police Department, and the rest with the Payette County Sheriff's Office. We have asked him on to discuss his work today. Sheriff Creech, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I saw a news article where up in Idaho, you guys have been working to try and get next generation 911 services. And that kind of, piqued our interest. And so we wanted to kind of meet with you and talk with you about that. So just to kind of lay the foundation, could you tell us what 911 has been like in Idaho up until this point?
Yeah, 911, of course, we've been providing service around the state of Idaho with 48 different PSAPs, and we've continued to work on just the regular 911, but what we're finding is that we're starting to have some failures, and we're having some concerns about the way our system works. And so several years ago, we started working on trying to find a path to move towards next generation 911, knowing that that's really the direction we need to go, and that'll help solve some of the failures we're having, and would help the citizens get the service that they expect that they'll get when they call 911.
When you're talking about the some of the failures and some of the issues you're having, y'all don't have the exact locations that cell phones, because I assume cell phones are the bread and butter of your 911 calls, as they are in most centers, 80-90%.
Yeah, I mean, it's about 80-90% here in Idaho that all cell phones are from there, and yet we don't have any location data that's sent off of the phone itself through 911. We're still using phase 2 911 here, and so we're getting that location off of a triangulation of cell phone towers. Most centers, or possibly all centers in Idaho, but most of them at least, are using Rapid SOS as an over-the-top solution that does provide that, although we've had some issues even getting the location from there in some of our more rugged terrain across the state.
I'm sure. What kind of prompted this thrust to make this upgrade? Was there a particular event where somebody was having trouble being found, or was it just an accumulation of, hey, these problems have been stacking up for years and years, and there's a solution for it?
Well, we've been working on this for at least 3 years now, trying to move this direction. And I think part of it's just a realization that some of the tech pieces are outdated. And so we have some counties where they have 2 trunk lines, and one of the 2 trunk lines is unreliable and it keeps failing. And they have difficulty getting any provider to come in and fix those trunk lines. And I think there's some recent FCC rulings that have help push telecommunicators to start abandoning these trunk lines, but it's still the lifeline of a 911 center here in Idaho. And so, as we started getting all the PSAPs together and starting to talk about 911 and about the issues they're having, and then you really just kind of get an idea that it's not just this one center. There's multiple issues around the state of Idaho, and that the issues that the center next to you is having, you're running on the same kind of technology that's old and outdated and no longer being maintained. And so that could happen at my dispatch center today, or it could happen at my neighbor's tomorrow. we're all running on this same antiquated equipment that's no longer maintained.
Absolutely.
And so it's really from that we finally just said, it's time for us to find a solution and to move this ahead.
Well, that's a nice change of pace because normally it's some tragic event that spurs people to action. So I'm really happy to
Yes.
see that you guys are saying, hey, you know what? If we can avoid this tragic event, let's do that. I think that's really, really great. You don't see that enough.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
because typically in law enforcement, that's not how it is.
yeah. And I think we've had some incidents that, you could call like a near miss. I mean, last year in 2024, they updated a switch in southwestern Idaho. That's where our capital city is. So that's where over half of the population of Idaho is at. And they estimated that switch should be down for 5 minutes. It was down for 9 minutes. And during that time, um, one of the counties in this area missed two 911 calls for altercations that were occurring in their jurisdiction. And
Ooh.
while they were able to figure that out through Rapid SOS, and they were able to call them back and get officers there, it just goes to show how fragile the infrastructure is for 911.
Well said. Well said. So, and I'm curious because that incident, I can only imagine, just like in your center or any other center, the stress level for your first responders, for your 911 operators or dispatchers, because I feel like in your neck of the woods, typically they are both, right? They take the call and they dispatch as well, typically.
Yeah, I think most of the centers in Idaho, they're both the call taker and the dispatcher. There are some larger centers
Mhm.
where those are separated roles, but I think by and large, yeah, they do both roles.
I can only imagine, once they realized this near miss, they're like, what? It's just the stress of it, and they're scrambling, trying to figure it out, and crossing fingers, and even praying, even that that we don't that someone actually answers the phone, because if it's a disturbance, typically we don't even make that call back. We just go off of what we have and we send, and so having outdated equipment or failures has a ripple effect. It is, of course, it impacts the person that needed to call 911, but your first responders are impacted also.
And in this situation, we knew that update was going to happen. We knew the 911 would be out, but it also occurs where our 911 lines are down and we're not aware of that. And then we'll get a
Oh,
phone call from somebody on our administrative line that says, "Hey, I've been trying to call 911 but can't get through," and that happens too. So I mean, this was a incident where we knew it was going to occur. We had people there to help watch it, like and so that they were paying attention for that. But it also occurs where it's not a planned event and 911 just goes down, and we're not aware of it until somebody calls in and says, "Hey, your 911 lines are down."
wow. And I'm curious, in a situation like that, what do you do, or when they're down? Is it just the admin lines, and that's just what you work with until they're back up? You make a bunch of calls to your vendor and say, "Hey, get over here."
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you do is call your vendor, and then you can take and have them start diverting them to admin lines. We have worked a lot over the last decade of putting in more remote host systems, and so there's a chance that some of those automatic failures will move on to another county so that they're being answered somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else. But it depends on where that failure occurs. If that failure occurs before the camera trunk, before it gets received into the system, then it's not going to fail over to anybody else. So it kind of depends on where the failure is occurring at, to depend on what the options are. So we do have remote host connections. We do have some failovers throughout most of the state, and so there's an opportunity for some of that to be failed over. But if that failure is occurring like before the camera trunk area, then you got to call your vendor and have them start troubleshooting it and working on it to figure out where
Yeah.
the failure's at, what to do.
And that brings its own, I like to call it the mad ants. Everybody's just scrambling, trying to, get it fixed, because it's 911. And we and Gary talk about it sometimes on the show. 911 is not something that you should have to think about. It's supposed to just be there, and it's supposed to be steady. And when the phone rings, somebody picks it up. And
And you know,
that's
I
what
think about
Idaho
it.
is working towards. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what I think about with that is that 911 is been here for so long, people just expect it to be there. And what we find as we talk with people, as we have started talking about the issues that we're seeing in Idaho, that the things that they can do on their phone, they expect that 911 has access to all of that. And so when they go to call an Uber or they call somebody and they know exactly where they're standing, they expect 911 to know exactly where they're standing. And they don't understand that it doesn't work that way. And although their phone's capable of giving us that exact location, we don't get it. And so there's things that I
Yes.
know that the citizens expect that 911 can do, and in reality, they can't. They can't in Idaho because we haven't made this transition to better, newer technology.
Absolutely. I really like the way you put that, an Uber, because, well, recently Gary and I had that experience of, opening up the app and where it's like, wow, and it tells you where you are, let alone you having to tell it where you are. And so between apps like that and TV, where those operators can do amazing things. I mean, they can override all kinds of systems and pull up maps for all kinds of stuff inside the buildings, and it's just amazing. And so I get exactly what you mean. The public has that expectation, and they are shocked, amazed, and surprised when we tell them, "No, I need you to tell me where you are." And yeah, I get it.
We run into that problem all the time. I'm assuming it's not just an Idaho thing, but where people don't know where they're at. And even people that
Mm-hmm.
live and they're in the area where they live, they don't actually know the
Mm-hmm.
street names where they're at. And so when we ask them, where are you? That's a hard question for them to answer. And so, and then depending on the 911 call and where they're located, depends on how accurate the information you give of approximately where they're at. And so that just makes
Yeah.
it even harder to find them, especially if they can't tell us exactly where they're at.
Yeah. Then every special skill and talent that your operators possess goes into it goes into action actually. And one of while it's going to sound crazy to anybody that does not work in our industry, but it is an amazing thing to watch these professionals begin to problem solve, trying to figure out where this person is, because not to blame the system, but for whatever reason, the failure happened, right? They don't have everything that they need. And they are like worse than a dog with a bone, really, because they will not stop until they figure it out. They will exhaust everything. And while that's wonderful, we don't want that to have to be the case.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing when you look at them working in the dispatch centers. They often have multiple different maps up, whether that's their emergency response map or a map with their call
Yep.
handling equipment, their I
Yep.
am responding map. They're a lot of
Yep.
times they have lots of different maps, and then they've used those things enough. They're like, this one's a little more reliable than that one, and then they're
Yeah.
also used them enough that they're like, this one's not acting right today. I'm not sure that it's as accurate as what this one would be. And then there's lots of
Mm-hmm.
different information available to them with past call history and stuff like that. And it's just when you have
Yes.
a good dispatcher and you're watching them work, they can just be amazing at how they're processing all that data and trying to figure this out so they can get the right units to the right place.
Absolutely. Well said. I even as supervisor, sometimes we're watching our team go to work, and it just blows my mind. Even though I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times over the years, it still is just amazing to watch. So you would want them to have every tool available. So I get it. And correct me, sir, did you say 48 PSAPs?
I think there's 48 primary PSAPs in Idaho and several secondary PSAPs.
And you all have to come together to agree on this system, or just where you are, you're doing the catch up to come alongside the ones that already have the next gen. Is that right or no?
There's so the only county that's in progress of moving to next generation 911 is Ada County. That's our capital city. and
Yeah.
they're pretty far along in the process, and we'll be probably deploying that here later this year. They're relatively close, so just don't know the date that they'll be deploying it and they'll be live. The other 47 counties, uh, we've been working at trying to find a way. So in Idaho, we have a grant program that is funded through surcharges on telephone lines,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we've been looking at leveraging that grant program to help make this happen. We've had some failed attempts at bringing legislation to increase revenue in order to bring this in, and so we've been working at looking at revenue that's already available and how we could use that, in a way to make a difference in our state. And that's really where the focus has been. When we started really this last year working on trying to put a next generation 911 project together, we wasn't sure if the entire state of Idaho would all come together and on one core services or if we'd have multiple core services throughout the state. But as that process unfolded, all of the PSAPs all joined together to come in on one system, which happened to be the same system that Ada County had already decided to go with. So the entire state of Idaho will be on this one core service.
Nice. Oh, that is lovely. That I don't know we would ever. I just don't know if that would ever happen. 257 counties, I think, is what we have, right? Something like that in
Yeah, I
Texas.
think it's 256, but yeah.
Okay.
So, kind of going along with what you hope to achieve for the upgrade is to get everyone on the same system, so everybody's kind of talking the same language. Everybody in the state will get the same level of service and uptime with their 911 agencies.
Yeah, so that's the hope, is that the level of service will be the same throughout the state of Idaho. The citizens that live in my county, they travel. There's counties around our area that are more recreational, and so they leave my county and go up to that county. But that county has a very small population. Their taxes, it's property tax that funds our local counties, and that looks a lot different than my county or than Canyon County or Ada County that's beside me.
Mhm.
And so when our residents go to these smaller counties to recreate, um, we want them to have that same reliability and that same expectation that they have at home, that they'll have the same thing up there. And that's really trying to level that playing field so that we have that same consistent service across the entire state of Idaho.
Ugh. Have have y'all looked at keeping those individual PSAPs, or does this involve some element of consolidating them into fewer ones that can pool resources?
There's a group of counties, kind of in the southern section of our state where they have joined together into a one PSAP called CIRCOM, and there's several of them that are combined together in that one. What we have done is combine them together in those remote and host call handling equipment, so that they all have their
Mm-hmm.
own individual PSAPs, but we're not duplicating the full build out of the call handling equipment at every county. The other thing is that the Joint Legislative Committee Oversight Committee asked the OPE if they would study 911 and next gen 911, and to put a report together to look at what we need to do with our statutes in order to better support a transition into 911. And they're currently working on that. And they've interviewed people through the IPSCC, and they've interviewed PSAP owners, and they've interviewed
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different stakeholders. And they're working on putting that together. And we're awaiting their report, which could talk about how combining PSAPs together and having more regional PSAPs might save some funds and might be able to help that limited money go further. But at this point, that conversation hasn't moved there, but it certainly could. There's reasons why it would be good, and I think there's also concerns for all of us that run our own dispatch center about joining with somebody else.
Absolutely.
We know a little about that, huh, Gary? Just a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit. I mean, I get it because it could. I definitely can see the benefits if I'm thinking about the service level. One of the things that jumps out at me is the ability to, if you are a urban PSAP, right, and you have a county PSAP right next to you, to be able to say, hey, X, Y, and Z, or even just literally at times we can just stand up and throw something at the county dispatcher and we can have a conversation, and it is a lovely thing. But I can understand how you don't want to lose that autonomy to run your center the way you believe or see fit, or what matters most, or makes most sense for the population that you have. I
think
can
the
see
other
that.
the other thing too, when you talk about starting to combine them together, there's some challenges here that are outside of next gen 911, and that is like if you consolidate dispatch centers together and they can all receive the phone calls all in one center for multiple jurisdictions. I think the challenge is also with our radios and our radio infrastructure, and
Mm-hmm.
there is radio infrastructure available to be bought that to where you could broadcast in a jurisdiction, many miles away. However, most of our counties don't have that kind of infrastructure. So even like with
Yeah.
me, there's 4 counties that we share the same call handling solution, and we work together and have overflow calls that go over. But when my overflow calls go to my neighboring county, they can't actually dispatch over the radio on any of my frequencies. They can't access
Oh
any of
well.
my mountaintop repeaters. And so while they can receive the call and they can do things like emergency medical dispatching and things like that,
Sure.
they have to call me back. And so if I couldn't have taken the call in the first place, I may not be able to take their call so that I can dispatch it out. And then we haven't integrated like CAD systems together. So while some PSAPs in Idaho that work closely together have done that, not all of them have. And so if they enter in a new call, that'll be on their CAD system. It's never going to show up in that region where it actually needs to be at. And so beyond
Well,
next generation 911, there's a lot more work to be done before we really start talking about consolidating 911 centers together.
Uh,
makes
and it,
sense.
yeah, it's a tough decision because you lose a lot of that personality and that human element when you've just got a giant building of 500 people that take the entire state's emergency calls. Whereas opposed to when you've got, this is Betty, she's our dispatcher, she works in the morning. You
Mm-hmm.
get to know the people a little bit more, know their voices, know when they're stressed out. So it has its benefits and drawbacks. So that is a tough choice to have to make.
But I think some of that, like when you think about like our local dispatch center, they know our area. They live here too. And when our
Mm-hmm.
officers are out working and they check out at a landmark, our dispatchers instantly know exactly where they're at. And I have
Yeah.
never worked with a larger dispatch center, but I think that there could be challenges there where they're not familiar with the same area that they're talking about, and that like we try to get our patrol officers to actually use like streets so that everybody knows where they're at, but that's
I'm
always
sorry.
happened.
Oh my God, yes. Some things are universal. Yes, it doesn't matter where you are. Ah,
Without a
We
doubt.
have that.
What is the timeline you're looking at for sort of transitioning your state over from the copper lines of calling 911 to the sort of the next generation lines, that these fiber optic cables and next generation video, all that kind of such?
So there's going to be a kind of a rollout of this. So not the entire state of Idaho will go all at once. It's going to be a period of time as some of them come on, and then another group and another group. But we're looking at probably 12 to 18 months from October, November of this year
well,
before the first sets start to come on. And part of that is we've been working on our GIS information for several years now, and there's still some more additional like updates and changes that need to be done in the GIS. That's really important in the call routing piece of next generation 911. And so we're still working on finalizing those pieces so that everybody's data meets all the NINA standards. And then there's also some call handling equipment that is not compatible with next generation 911. And so we're working on updating that. And so we're looking at those
Yeah.
first counties to come on to next generation 911 within the next year to 18 months. And then after that, there will be additional counties coming on after that. We're just going to do it in phases as we bring them on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds like a very structured approach, and the equipment issues, I can attest, are ever present everywhere. I know that at our own center we have a lot of issues getting specific items that connect to the radios and the phones so you can actually use the computers to talk to people. So, yeah, that can be a real challenge at times.
It really can be a challenge at that. And then just getting the funding there, these systems aren't cheap. And so just trying to
Yeah.
time that funding out, there's a limited amount of money and we're trying to do a large project with it. And so we're really just trying to time that money as the revenue comes in and what the expenses are so we can get the entire state moved over.
Yeah, and kind of going along with that, how did you convince the powers that be, the legislatures, city councils, county boards, to? Because I know you said earlier that you kind of were dipping into the fund that people pay on their cell phones for 911 to cover this, but did you get any support from state and local officials?
Well, at the state level, the challenge there has always been that we've talked about raising that rate up, and raising rates of any sort in Idaho is really difficult to do. And so we haven't been able to do that. We've given some presentations to the legislators this last year, and we've given some examples of failures that have happened in Idaho, and have talked about like the age of our system and the differences between our phase two 911 and what next generation 911 would be. And so we've given some presentations to them, but they haven't enacted any legislation that would help further us in doing this. And so it really come down to a local effort of wanting to improve 911 and move ahead with something to make our 911 system more reliable. And that's where the IPSCC got in and helped support that local effort. And it's really that local effort that brought together a group of stakeholders from throughout the state of Idaho to work together to find one solution. And that's what we've done, is help support that effort.
Now, when we say raising rates, people are like, "Ooh, I don't want my taxes to be raised." But I'm not sure what it is in Idaho, but for the state of Texas, the rate is 50 cents a month for a cell phone line. So we're not talking hundreds of dollars or even tens of dollars. It's a very modest amount to make emergency services work a lot better. And I think, because I agree with you, like people hear that, they're like, I definitely don't want to pay more taxes no matter what happens. But
Yeah.
it's such like a small increase for such a amount of improvement that you can get and
Yeah.
save lives.
The payoff would be amazing.
Yeah, really, that payoff is important. And in Idaho, like that, our rate is $1.25 a month per line. $1 comes to the local PSAP to help fund that PSAP. A quarter goes to the grant fund. And what we were talking about is raising the grant side from a quarter to 75 cents or $1. So we're talking a 50 cent or 75 cents per month per line rate. So at most that would have went from $1.25 to $2 per month per line. And really, when you think about the time that you might need 911, and I know that that's extremely rare in most people's lives, that they'll ever need to call 911, but I think statistics show that at some point you will call 911, and the expectation is it's going to be there, and they're going to have the equipment they need to answer that call, and they'll have the equipment they need to know where you're at and send somebody to you.
Hmm.
And I think in
Yeah.
Idaho, that's where we think that we're failing at right now, is that these systems are not reliable.
One of the good things about kind of getting out there and talking to people on our podcast here is people can see like, oh, 75 cents a month per line, that might be worth it, so I can make sure grandma's phone number, or when she calls, people know
Yeah.
where she's at and get the help that she needs. Because you guys have mountainous terrain over there, so you've got additional resources you need to spend on your hilltop radios and things like that, and that all costs money to maintain.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a caller in one of our mountainous areas, a family that was calling 911. Their child needed an ambulance, but they had no idea where they were at. They were up just recreating in that area, but they couldn't tell dispatch where to find them. And the call came through as a phase one, so there was no location data that came
Oh.
with it. And Rapid SOS wasn't able to pick up their location and send it through their channels. And that family had to hang up and call 911 multiple times over before Rapid SOS finally picked up that location and sent it so they could get it. The 911 system never triangulated their location and sent it through the 911 system to their dispatch center. And this was a real incident where you have a family that their child is in need of medical care and they can't
Oh.
communicate where they're at and we can't find them. And this is the problems that we're having here in Idaho. And I mean, this is the reason why we just can't wait any longer to make this move.
Yeah, absolutely. And and in my head, I mean, I know you can't make it, you can't change it now, but I'm screaming, what 3 words? What 3 words? Right now. And because I had a situation that was similar. And that app saved that family because I couldn't, nothing I had worked. So, do you guys use what 3 words there at all?
I haven't heard if our dispatch center is using it, no.
It's
But it's
pretty
something we should look into.
awesome. We will send you an email. But seriously, no kidding, because this family was from out of the city of Austin. I think they're from Houston or Dallas or somewhere. They were in a green belt and deep in this green belt, and they did not know where they were. They couldn't figure it out for anything. And it's like straight out of a movie. They only had like 1.5 bars left on the phone. I'm like, great. And no, battery pack to charge the phone. So we've got limited time. And I'm like, what the Sam am I going to do? And I remembered what 3 words. And I told the lady, I walked her through downloading that app. She downloaded it, and beautifully, it gave me the 3 words that I needed. I plugged them in, and I was able to guide her close enough to where she and her family could get out. So they didn't need medical attention. They were just lost. They couldn't find their way out of the greenbelt. So it wasn't where I needed to do any extra heroics. It was just a matter of finding them. And I'm not comparing our little greenbelt to your mountainous terrain, but I wonder, according to to the app itself, what is it, 10 feet, Gary? Is it 10 feet?
I think it's is it 3 meters? So about 10 feet.
About every 10 feet of the world has been mapped out. And so you can move 10 feet in any direction. And the 3 letters, or I'm sorry, the 3 words that will triangulate where you are change as you move. And we use it here. And officers are able to find people when they can't give us an address. They can't give us a cross street or a landmark or anything. It's pretty reliable stuff. A real life story. I want to talk to that dispatcher, by the way.
Yeah. We've had some, the routing of calls is really challenging too, especially where you have these jurisdictions where they're near their boundary. You have like large cities on either side of that boundary line. You have cell towers on each side. These calls get routed incorrectly. I think they estimate 11, 12% of all 911 calls, all cell phone 911 calls are misrouted. But in eastern or northeastern Idaho, we have a county near the boundary of a different state, and that cell tower, those antennas are set up in a triangle fashion, and in the one sector that pointed at the other state got routed to where all 911 calls that came in that sector went to that state. Well, that state wasn't able to transfer them back as a 911, so when that center got it back again, it came back without any color or location data.
Oh, no.
You can just imagine that of the information that we have available to dispatchers here, they couldn't get that information for these calls. That just makes their job that much harder. and it
How
makes
much
it that
harder?
much harder to get help to people when
Sure.
that call gets transferred to the wrong PSAP, and then when it gets transferred back, everything that's helpful to dispatch gets stripped off of it.
Yep. It absolutely does. That still happens, or God forbid they hang up, or the call is dropped on its way back. That
Yeah.
is awful. So yeah, that struggle is very real. Yeah.
I think people in emergency communications are, well known for being strong proponents of change and trying new things and really just kind of jumping in without any issues like that. So, have you had any? I'm joking, of course. We're very intransigent. Have you had? What has been the 911 operators, the dispatchers? What has been kind of their response to this sort of changeover? Is it apprehension, like I'm worried about what this may bring? Is it excitement? I'm really excited to get all this additional data.
I'm not sure about statewide, but my dispatch center has gotten used to the fact that I change things, and they may not like it. And
Nice.
I've learned to try to be a little bit more subtle in the changing. I was put over as administrator over them about 11 years ago, and everything we had was outdated and near failure. And I think in one year I came in and changed like five things, and my administrator said, "Knock it off." I learned that in dispatch, everything's connected to everything, and a lot of thought needs to go into changing one thing. But I think in
Yes.
Idaho that I think overall, I think that we realize the need for what we're doing, and I think that helps with the need for us to learn and do something new. And I really think that the rollout in this is going to really be key for how successful it gets rolled out. With dispatch, they have their screen set up and they have their button in this one spot, and they're going to automatically go to that spot. And it doesn't matter where you move that button, they're always going to go to where it was before they're like, oh, yeah, we moved it. And
Oh
so I
my
think
God, that's
this
awesome.
change, this change has to be really managed well. I think people are looking forward to having some of the problems we have fixed, and I think that
Yes.
helps with the change piece. I think the other piece is trying to, with a lot of systems now, they're very customizable, and so it might be one person's product, but they can certainly make it look like the other guy's product, and so some of that laying
Yeah.
it out to work familiar with them, I think is going to help them with the change piece, because that'll be the biggest issue. For one, they want to know it's reliable and that it's going to work, and for the other, it needs to be familiar so that when they go to click in that one spot where that button always is, they really want that button in that same spot. And I think that there's the opportunity to try to help mold this so that it's familiar with them, and hopefully they'll see it's reliable as well. And then that way they can trust it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to see that
That's
PSAPs
hilarious. A
all over the
button.
country share at least one similarity.
We hate change. Don't change our stuff. Don't move my button. That is my seat. I've been sitting there since God was a boy. And what's wrong with you for trying to fix it? Oh, yeah, that's us.
The chairs
Uh,
are amazing. We buy 24/7 chairs. We have like the ones with the big backs. We have one with big arms. We have one with no arms.
Yeah.
And you have one with lower back. And like they have their chair. And it's like when they come in, if somebody's in their spot, in their chair, like they'll work on a different station until they leave and they're moving. So
Yes.
that is not just an Idaho thing. I can assure you of that.
Another thing that is universal. Oh, boy.
Well, everyone, we appreciate you joining us today. We've been discussing the Idaho update to their next generation software with Sheriff Andy Creech of the chairman of the Idaho Public Safety Communications Committee, IPSC. And we thank you very much for joining us today, sir.
thank you for having me. We're just trying to get this information out. I really appreciate your efforts, just helping educate our PSAPs and also our public, just so they're aware of this big change that we're doing and how it is hopefully going to have a positive impact on them. Should they ever need to call 911, hopefully we're going to be better prepared and better able to respond to them.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And we thank you for your hard work in trying to upgrade these lines, maybe despite some internal and external resistance to that. And we thank all of you for watching with us today, and we hope that you enjoyed the episode. If you have any comments, please be sure to leave them down below, or you can shoot us an email to lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. And from all of us at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary.
America.
And we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911 Podcast, copyright 2025. From all of us at Lifeline, stay safe out there. And until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.